Let's call to order the March 20th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll do the reading of our mission statement. We are committed to academic achievement and success for all students in a safe environment. In partnership with families and our community, our mission is to promote confidence, inspire a passion for learning, and to prepare our students to become responsible global citizens. May I have an approval of our revised agenda?
Motion.
A motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now I'll turn it over for updates on questions and comments from interested citizens.
So last time that we were together, we had two very articulate students, Zaid and Ismar, who spoke on behalf of the Muslim community, and they were talking about getting the Eid holiday off. So I want to speak to that because at this moment, we are going to have a change in calendar. I feel like I'm announcing something really big. So the way the calendar works is the district really tries to follow BOCES calendars because we have students that attend BOCES program. And this past Thursday, BOCES approved their calendar, but they have 2 weeks off during the winter break. So that really means that for us, we need to go back to the table. I have called the union president because part of what we do is sit down and kind of look through the calendar. We have a tentative date, meeting tomorrow to talk about the calendar and see how we can really mirror the calendar of BOCES. So it's very likely that we're going to have to move a couple of days around to be able to have 2 weeks off during the winter break. We will do everything not to really destroy what we have in the calendar, but I have to take a look at that. Again, the premise was designing a calendar that was around following the BOCES calendar because we try to make sure that our students who go to CTEC or go to other BOCES programs don't miss out on going to school. So I will be back with that. Probably the next meeting I will have an updated calendar. It will not have major changes. I have to look at 2 days and how I can move 2 days around to make sure that I do that. But it's very, very likely that I will come back with a new calendar for 2 weeks off at winter break. So going back to the two students, that just makes this even harder. So I want to really implore to everyone that for me, it's difficult to add holidays or religious days to the calendar because we are so constricted by the state adding holidays. And so it makes it very difficult to just add another holiday, right? I have to have 180 school days. The union has 183 days, and I have to make sure that I build in enough snow days, because one of the things that we don't want to do in the district is immediately go to remote days. That has been really difficult. So I want to make sure that we have enough built-in days so that if we need to close, we have enough days without having to go to remote days. It doesn't mean that that's not going to happen, but that is the last resort. So we're going to go back. I'm going to meet with Mr. McElroy tomorrow. We're going to go over the calendar. We have some ideas on how we can make this happen. And I hope that I'll come back with better news.
Right. And we have one more response, but we'll wait until Mike gets here.
Yes, Mr. Cirio did want to respond back to Mrs. Vega's comment, and he felt that he wanted to speak when he was here during this response, but unfortunately, he's a little delayed. He should be here shortly.
Can I just add, I don't know where, Michael, but he's not here, so the football schedule came out, and I don't know where I should ask that question, if I should wait till the end or if I should do it here, because I know it has been a public comment that was brought to us, I think, 2 months ago, and there is an update. So I didn't know if that was appropriate now or if we should wait till later.
So I think that Dr. Hasser is going to speak about it when we go around the table, so he's
Okay.
going to have a response.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. And here is our president, Mr. Ciriello.
Right now, we can also turn it. We're going to wait for a response.
Give a couple of minutes, yeah,
All right.
unless you want us to keep going.
Keep going.
Okay.
Do we have any questions or comments from interested citizens today?
No.
Then it's right back to Mike.
That was good. That was really good.
So did you do the update?
I did.
Yeah.
I did my update,
Okay.
and then you were going to do the other update.
Yes. Last meeting, we had Mrs. Vega, who spoke in front of the school board. We thank you for coming and sharing your perspectives with us. The board has put a lot of thought into our superintendent search and the process that we'll be using. So I know the request was to participate in the interview process. That is not the direction we're going to be going in. So just thank you for coming out, and we have our process well baked out for the search. So that was all I had there. Next up, budget presentation, personnel and benefits.
Talked about the calendar. Let everybody know. That's more important.
Good evening. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to present our personnel budget here this evening. And I also want to thank our business office staff for their assistance in developing tonight's presentation, specifically Michael Buffamonte, Patricia Wallace, and Patrick Cahill. In tonight's budget presentation, we will take a look at staffing from the following perspectives. You get the next one. Thank you. We're going to begin by looking at district-wide FTEs, or full-time equivalent positions, that we're proposing for the 2024-2025 school year. These positions will be reviewed in two separate categories, those included in the general fund and those that will be funded through federal and state grants. We'll then provide an overview of expenditures or salaries for personnel, and then finally, we'll examine the costs associated with employee benefits. On this first slide, we break down our district personnel into 20 categories. We also provide a year comparison of FTEs. You'll see that we've proposed a total of 1,122.51 FTEs for next year, which represents an overall year-to-year reduction of 6.17 FTEs. That translates to a decrease of 0.546%. We're going to discuss some of these larger changes, but for most of these categories, you will see changes from one year to the next that are relatively small and inconsequential. Most of the departments that show minor increases are due to recoding or reallocating FTEs from other departments, as opposed to adding or decreasing FTEs. Let's look first at the transportation line, because that is where we see the largest increase. The 6.7 FTE increase in transportation includes an increase related to a payroll clerk and portions of two other buildings and grounds personnel being appropriately coded to transportation so that we can maximize our eligible transportation aid. The additional increase represents additional drivers and bus attendant positions. Those are currently vacant positions that do not have runs associated with them, but we are keeping these positions in the budget to provide for the possibility of being able to bring back some runs in-house, as well as accounting for additional students with IEPs that may at some point require monitors. The other large number we need to look at is a decrease to the teaching special ed ELL line. What you see in this chart is a reduction of 7.63 FTEs. Now, this will lead you to believe that we are making reductions in the number of instructional staff working with our students. This is actually not the case. We will not have fewer instructional staff working with our students next year. We did, however, reallocate positions to address our areas of need. At the outset, our goal was to find a balance between three things: a decline in enrollment, changing needs for our student population, and our duty to be fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. All of these things needed to be taken into consideration equally. With a decline in student enrollment, we're expecting a reduction in the number of elementary sections. Positions designated for those purposes are not being eliminated, but rather reallocated to other areas. For example, we'll be adding a co-teach class at Sapphire, we'll be adding 2 E&L positions at the high school, and a special education class at the middle school. These reallocations are all driven by student need and also by our obligation and desire to educate our children in the least restrictive environment. Your question still remains, though, so where are the 7.63 positions coming from? And that's a great question. I'm going to explain that when I explain the next phase of our budgeting process. So in order to understand this budgetary decrease, I ask that you think about these FTEs as positions and not people. In order to ensure a lean budget, we went through a painstaking yet strangely satisfying process of examining position control. That means we scrutinized each and every position in the budget, all 205 pages of data, and removed positions that we were sure did not need to be carried forward. It's important to understand these positions were vacant and not representing actual instructional personnel for the previous year. One example of this is a teacher who switched certification areas and needed to be coded differently. She was placed in a new position control number, but her previous position was not removed. It is now. We also had a few instances where teachers went on maternity leave, and we had to hire leave replacements, essentially having 2 people in the same position. And this is not an issue, it happens all the time. But once the teacher returns from the leave, the other position needs to be removed. It was a long process, but position control is cleaner and leaner to the tune of 7.63 FTEs. I don't want you to think that this process isn't done on an annual basis. It is. We just dug deeper this year and scrutinized every single position, like I said, over 205 pages, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
And it was a lot of fun. Just looking at the numbers.
It was fun. I want to look at a few other numbers on this slide. You'll notice a security decrease. Be assured that safety is still our top priority. We're not reducing coverage in our buildings. We do have 2.5 less dedicated FTEs for our safety officers, but we have maintained the size of our staff because there are also safety officers who are paid as vouchered subs, which I will explain in a later slide, where you will see an increase in that area. The next category I'd like to talk about is, because it is one of the larger numbers at -3 FTEs, is computer-assisted instruction. You'll see a decrease of 3 FTEs here. 2 of them are recodes to general education, and the third is recoded to central data processing, which explains the additional 1.0 in that area as well. If you look at the attendance line, you'll see an increase of 0.57. That is simply a matter of us adding a part-time bilingual registrar that goes through the attendance code. In health services, you'll see minus 2.0. Again, it's not necessarily less staffing. Last year, we added 2 RN positions because we had school nurse teachers in those positions, and it is very difficult to find school nurse teachers these days. But we were able to pick up the instructional piece of that through our special area teachers and hire RNs in the place of the SNTs. So although we added RNs last year, the S&T positions were still in there. We removed them from the budget as well. In psychological services and social work, Patrick has on a number of occasions referred to a time when COVID-related grant funding would end and we would need to absorb these positions into the general fund. That time is now. With expiring federal aid provided by ARPA, you can see an increase of 1.6 FTEs, which represents positions we need to absorb into our general budget. Okay, are there any questions so far? Is there anything you would like clarified on this slide? Yes.
Was there a reason for the increased scrutiny this year?
Yes, and that ties into the other two things that we spoke about. We knew we were going to go down in sections in the elementary school based on a decline in enrollment, but we also knew that we had needs in other areas. And we needed to retain those positions and reallocate them. That's why we had to dig a little bit deeper this year. And the third portion I mentioned was just being, fiscally responsible and thinking of our taxpayers. All those things came into play, and listen, in a budget this size with the number of personnel that we have, 7.63 is not a large number, but it's what we needed.
And kind of follow-up question, are we going to have it like on a more regular basis in the future?
Yeah, it was fun. We're going to keep doing it.
It is. It seems.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know if it's going to be every year, but every 3 years or whatever.
Yeah. We actually, in the last couple of years, have gone through a process with HR, payroll, and the business office, and we all coordinate our efforts, and we do this on a regular basis. So it really was a matter of cleaning up and digging a little bit deeper, but on a regular basis, we do adjust these things, and we're in very good shape with our position control.
Thank you.
I have a question. What would be included in curriculum development and supervision? Not specifically the person. What positions are those? Is that an Eric question?
I think it's us.
It
I think
is.
it's Matt and I and the CNI office.
Yep, it is. It's three certificated positions and 2 clerical, I believe.
My only question is, how does it affect class size? So realizing we have a reduction in students, and then we're reducing in some, and then reallocating, which is all great and all that, but our class sizes, I know before, were a little bit higher than, at least I would prefer.
We're actually monitoring that very closely, and we're in a very good place right now with the goals for each of our grades. Numbers are being monitored weekly.
So the reduction in thing that has, in staff won't really affect class size.
The class size numbers will not go up. That we're not expecting,
They won't go
unless we
down
have a
either.
crazy influx that we can't anticipate, we are making sure that our class sizes remain within the range that we would like them to be.
Right, so they won't go up,
It's a
but
good
they won't
question.
go down either. Or we don't know.
Where,
'Cause like, a few years ago, I thought our class sizes were way too big, right? Especially at the elementary level when you have 25 kids in a class.
Mm-hmm.
So now it seems like they're more in the 23 to 22 range, which is great.
which is appropriate.
So we've gone in a positive direction, obviously. But like, if we're gonna reduce sections and we're gonna reduce staff or teachers or ELL,
So
then
the
I can see that
enrollment-
growing back up to 25 or remaining the same, but the goal is obviously to continually reduce it because our number one priority is to teach kids.
So what,
Teacher ratio is important now.
completely understood, and that's a great question, and I think it's important to understand that enrollment drives the number of sections. We don't cut sections and then hope that we have the right amount of kids in there. We look very closely at our projected enrollment. We're never going to be able to, to nail it exactly, but we have a good idea of what we're looking at if we roll second into third into fourth. But we make sure that our enrollment drives our decisions regarding making those cuts. And then once those cuts or reductions are made in sections, the class sizes are always of paramount importance, and that is something we're monitoring literally on a weekly basis.
Great, thank you.
And I think we discussed it at a previous meeting. Dr. Hassler may have said something, but our decline is really occurring more at the elementary level, correct? Than it is at the middle school and high school level?
Yes, and that's where the reductions are.
Okay.
That's where the reductions in sections are. However, even though you're having a reduction of, for example, 1 FTE in a building, we have a building that is adding 2 sections of a specific grade. So it's interesting, and it goes by grade, and it goes by school.
And we've seen that it's cohorts now going into 6th grade. There's a bit of a dip that's happening in 6th grade too. So it was heavily at the elementary level, but I think that slowly, we've had over the years bubbles of grade levels that have been over 600, graduating classes of 600. I think that those large bubbles, I think, are slowly moving upward, and we're seeing smaller cohorts of kids coming through, and that's slowly coming into the middle school. So it's been largely monitored at the elementary level, and I think we're going to have to keep a close eye on the middle school as well, kind of moving forward. And, each year that's slowly, incrementally moving forward. But again, it also depends on, we have kids moving out, but we also have kids moving in. I mean, registration is still busy on a daily basis. So it's exactly what Lori said, just literally watching it day by day.
I think the only building is our high school that has not seen. They're pretty much stagnant. So you'll see some change. And I think, talking about the cohorts of students. But again, enrollment is, depends upon who moves into the district, when they move into the district. One of the things that I should say is that typically enrollment used to happen in August. That's not the case anymore. Enrollment is happening in September, October, November, December. We can get a large cohort of students that move in January. So all of those things are hard to predict, but I think that the budget really reflects that in that we do have positions if that were to happen, right? We have to be cognizant of that and also look at the trends that we've had. So we have had a large cohort of students that move in, which is not typical for us. Like I said, January, December, February, and we have to be prepared for that. And I think this budget is reflective of that.
So it sounds like some elementary schools, from what Lori said, are having a reduction, but some are increasing. So I'm assuming like North Main is going up and
Yes.
CV is going down.
Yes,
But the total amount of students is going down, but slightly lower than.
yep.
And it also it fluctuates between grade levels. So in one building, we aren't necessarily seeing reductions at all grade levels. We may see a reduction at third and fourth grade, and then an increase at second grade, for example, at one of our buildings.
So we should add crystal balls to the budget.
That and, yes, along with the weather, letting us
Maybe
know
we
what the
buy one of
weather's
those
going to
Tarot
be.
cards, maybe.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so all the positions or FTEs that we've just talked about are part of our proposed general fund budget. It's important to understand that there are an additional 34.31 positions that we are anticipating will be alternately funded through federal and state grants. We budget for these grants based on the current year, but there are small fluctuations from year to year based on federal allocations. The title grants and the IDEA grants are recurring federal grants that we receive each year. The UPK program, as you see here, will continue being funded, but the source is shifted this year from federal to state funding for 24-25. You can also see how important this funding is for our instructional staff. It actually provides us with salaries for 30 additional teachers and teaching assistants. And that's something that is not only necessary, but it's important to understand where that money is coming from. And now that we know how many employees or FTEs we have district-wide, we're going to take a look at how they are allocated. The graphics on this slide share how our human resources are allocated throughout the district and what percentage each subgroup represents in the overall personnel budget. As you would expect, the largest portion of our workforce is our instructional staff, representing over 82% of our overall staffing expenditures. We're going to look a little further into each of these subgroups and explore a year-to-year salary comparison. I'm going to start by focusing on the last line of this chart. You can see a proposed budget of $108,899,083. This represents an overall proposed increase of 3.98% for staff salaries. In each of these subgroups, you can see a percentage increase that's reflective of employee step increases and contractual increases. For example, our Monroe-Woodbury Teachers Association employees are due 2.25% increases next year in addition to their step increase. Our CSEA employees are due a 2% increase in addition to their step increase. So let's take a look at some of these categories a little closer. If we're looking at administration, you see an increase in 5%. As we all know, Elsie is going to be retiring this year, and there will be a period of transition and overlap with the new superintendent. This line also, that's included in this line. This line also includes potential for an increase in salary for an incoming superintendent. On the instructional side, on that line, you're going to see a 3.8% increase here, and this again is due to step and contractual increases for all our instructional staff, as well as increases from the implications of ARPA funding ending. We look at transportation, we see a 6.8% increase, and that again is due to step and contractual raises, plus recoding for a portion of 3 employees' salaries for the purpose of maximizing aid. That increase also accounts for those additional bus attendants and driver positions that we are going to be keeping in the budget and discussed earlier. The next category I'd like to discuss is safety and security. You saw earlier that we had a reduction of 2.5 FTEs. I told you that the 2.5 FTEs are not necessarily a reduction in staffing and dollar amount. What I mean by that is we are going down in actual positions, but up in expenditures. And I know that doesn't make sense, but let me explain it a little better. The increase of 6.8% represents a reallocation away from full-time safety officers and towards hiring more part-time subs. Safety officers are civil service employees, and we have repeatedly exhausted the list for eligible candidates. It's been difficult to fill the full-time positions, but we've been successful in hiring part-time subs who have flexible work schedules, and we are still able to ensure the safety of our staff, our students. And another aspect that people don't think of is, in addition to your school day, we have events in the evening. We want to make sure that our buildings are accessible and safe for our community members and our groups that use our facilities evenings, weekends, holidays, well, not so much holidays, just athletics. But the buildings are always open. You had a question?
Yeah, I do. Is it safe to assume that the part-time workers don't have to come off the civil service list?
Part-time workers do not come off a civil service
that's what
list.
I
Yeah.
thought.
There really is not a civil service list. We pull it and we see who we can hire off that list. We just
And we've
recently
exhausted
hired
it.
someone, but the list gets exhausted very quickly, and then our hands are tied. So either we don't have people working, or we can employ the part-time subs.
Thank you.
So the largest percentage increase on the slide is in the other category. At 19.1%, it is a large number, but it is a very small dollar amount, less than 1% of our staffing expenditures. The category includes health insurance buyouts and vacation buyouts, and we need to make sure that we adequately appropriate funds in this area. Okay, are there any questions about this slide? Okay. When we think of staffing cost, we typically focus on salaries, but we can't forget the equally important component of employee benefits. Employee benefits or fringe benefits can be broken down into the following 6 categories that you see in this chart. Health insurance coverage for active employees as well as retirees are included here at $29.98 million. That accounts for about 55% of our benefit expenditure. Contributions to the ERS and TRS retirement systems at $12.77 million account for roughly 23% of the costs. $8.3 million, or 15% of this budget, is allocated for FICA tax, which is a payroll tax paid to the federal government. At $1.65 million, employer insurance represents a small percentage at 3%, and that includes workers' comp, life insurance, unemployment, and disability. Dental and vision is fairly self-explanatory. At $1.2 million, that is 2% of the benefits. And another 2% is other employee benefits, and that includes retiree incentives and tuition reimbursement, and that's $1.15 million. We're going to look at each of these categories a little closer on the next slide. In the chart, we've outlined the expenditures for each of these benefit categories. The overall increase is 4.9%, and that's largely driven by increases in health insurance and contributions to New York State retirement systems. As you can see, health insurance is our largest benefit expenditure. The cost increase is approximately 3.3%, and it's primarily due to an increase in premiums through the Orange Ulster Health Plan. Dental and vision is up about $100,000, and that's associated with an increase in district contributions. If you look at the line for retirement systems, you see a 7.3% increase. The increase in this area, unfortunately, is out of district control, as the rates for distribution are dictated, or contribution, I should say, are dictated by New York State ERS and TRS retirement systems. ERS includes our non-certificated, non-instructional employees such as clerical, food service, bus drivers, and safety. We expect an 18 to 19% increase in the employer contribution rate next year for these employees. The rate for TRS, or our certificated instructional employees, fortunately, is only up 2.66% in comparison.
So I have a question there. And this might be more for Patrick, but if you know it, it's fine, because it's technical on the other side. The retirement system, does it not invest in the market to make returns? I don't know about anybody else, but our returns the last 2 years have been skyrocketing as far as with the market. So where does this type of a large increase, or where do they say it's actually coming from when the market itself, from an economy standpoint, I'm not talking about inflation, I'm talking about the stock market, bonds and stuff, have been performing quite well?
Definitely a Patrick question.
That's an interesting question, Michael. So,
That was good.
so it is based to a large degree and extent on the financial markets and the return on the financial markets. But I also believe there is a moving average, a multi-year moving average that is used. I believe it's almost 5 years. So we're having a good year now, right? That would be part of like a 5-year look back or average rate of return. And statistically, it's like has a smoothing effect. So the idea would be over time, we're not just going to bounce around. Hey, we had a good year in the markets. The rate can go down. Oh, we had a bad year. The rate has to go way up. Like that's essentially what the rate does, right? Is it based on that? It's also based on demographics of the pool of people, right? People coming in, people that are retired, the lifetime expectancy, those sorts of things, those demographic elements. So there's a lot that goes into it. So theoretically, and then like if the market continues to perform well or outperform historic norms, we'd tend to see that rate go down. And it's interesting that the ERS rate is the one that's up, way up, where the TRS is relatively stable. So these are two different retirement systems that maybe have different methodologies or policies about how they adjust the rates. But I mean, I could actually look into that a little bit more deeply and report out at another meeting if we like.
It's just interesting.
It is. I find it very interesting.
I would say since the last election, the market's been very strong.
Yep.
So if you're saying it's a 5-year average, well, we're coming up to another election, so that would be 4 years in.
Yep.
So it just seems like a pretty big increase. I think it's good for the public to understand that, because these come down from, I'm sure, actuarials up in Albany, and they calculate what needs to come down.
Absolutely. I mean, the other thing I would point out is we're talking about a rate, I think, and there's different tiers for different employees. So if you were just hired, you're a tier 6, there's going to be literally a different rate than somebody that's, been in the retirement system for 20 or 30 years. Would be like a tier 3 or 4. So it's actually fairly complicated to even get to the point where we're projecting these things out. But the rate itself is about, for next year, is about 17.8%. So think about that concept, that for every dollar a staffer earns ERS, we're contributing 17.8, I think it's 17.7 cents on their behalf to the retirement system. So it's a fairly good benefit, and it's, can be costly, especially when the rate is increasing like that. I mean, there were years during the internet bubble when you look at that historical rate where the rate was near zero because the market was doing so well.
Yes.
So it does go up and down.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly how I would have explained it. Okay. In the next chart, we've outlined the expenditures for, did we go through this one yet?
I think we did largely. I don't know if we covered everything, though.
Okay. In this chart, we outlined the expenditures for each benefit category. The overall increase of 4.9% is largely driven by the health insurance contributions and contributions to New York State retirement. We went through these.
We got that.
Where are we now?
I think maybe other.
Oh, the
employee benefits.
35%. Did we get to that one?
No, we did not.
Okay. That's a big number. So we'll take a look at the 35% increase in the other category. As I mentioned before, this is a big number in terms of percentage, But again, it only accounts for 2% of the benefit cost. The increase in this line is due to projected retiree incentives. When individuals retire, they're typically receiving payment for unused temporary leave days, and we want to make sure we allocate some funds in that area. Okay, any questions about that category? Or that slide, I should say? Okay, here are our takeaways. It's always our goal to provide students with a quality education. In this budget, we reallocated existing instructional positions to address the needs of all students. We were able to do this with no increase in FTEs, thanks in part to our work in position control. Finally, we exercise fiscal responsibility because we need to consider the impact to our taxpayers always. Are there any questions? Keep in mind, we have another presentation.
This was students us into it.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was good.
Yeah, but Eric's up.
That wasn't.
I told him he's got to cut it down.
Okay, the next budget presentation.
Oh, curriculum.
Switch. Switch out. Just give me the computer.
Printed it in color. That's a post.
Budget representation.
Yeah, there we go. You ready? Are you ready? Good.
You got the floor?
Great. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Thank you to all of you, our Board of Ed members. As we say every year, a presentation like this doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't just happen between the two of us. There are a lot of people who lay their hands on these numbers and are a big part of the fine-tuning. Thank you to our administrative team, the cabinet level, and the building and district level administrators. Also, our department chairs, they scrutinize their own departments at the secondary levels. Our coordinators, our music, art, phys ed, library, media coordinators. It was mentioned earlier, the business office, they are incredibly hardworking, and they help us with the numbers, they help the inputting, but also our building and district clerical staff. At every building, there's someone other than the administrator who's typically, putting numbers in, overseeing either, oh, I just noticed this, or did you think of that? In our office as well, particularly Teresa Padilla, who is the one who inputs all of this. So thank you to everybody. Is there anyone else you want to thank?
Nope.
All right.
So the presentation tonight consists of three main parts. The first is just general highlights and noteworthy items that are part of the CNI budget this year. Then we'll kind of get into the breakdown of the CNI budget in general, what the various components are of that. And then at the end, we'll go through specifically the special education and PPS budget because that represents by far the largest portion of the overall CNI budget.
And ultimately, we're trying to answer the question from a budgetary standpoint, what does it take to instruct our students, develop our staff, and connect with our families and how do you make that all look nice and neat within these types of numbers?
So I think from a general perspective, similar to, I think, the sentiment that Lori shared regarding human resources, the key focus for us in going into budget development is maintaining all of our programs. That's our number one goal. I think everybody's very proud of the work that we do within our school district, and how do we make sure that we continue to equip our staff with the materials and resources necessary in order to be able to do that. So at a very basic level, that is our number one goal.
And just a side note to that, which is interesting, we've been interviewing for a number of open positions within the district, and Lori and I did screening interviews the other day for one of the positions, and the number of people who came onto the screen and we were interviewing, the number of people who said, I was researching your district, and oh my gosh, we know you're good academically, we know you're moving forward in an academic direction.
but what you offer kids in terms of music, art, and then the fact that you display that and show that all over the place, that's what people notice about our school district. So it was great.
Professional development, obviously, this was something that is a carryover from last year. We increased the professional development lines. Now that we're post-COVID, we're really starting to bring people in and send people out to a lot of important and noteworthy, forms of professional development to be able to support instruction in the district. One of them was the Tri-State Consortium, which we spoke about last year. That is, again, continuing this year. Our relationship with them, we've very much benefited from our partnership with them, as well as all of the various other initiatives that we, provide PD for our staff.
And that one in particular is a group of, a regional group of district leaders and learners. And what they allow us to do is be a part of a team who goes into other school districts with a constructively critical lens. So we go in and we pick topics, we say, oh, this is what this district is doing. They open themselves up to us, and we have people who go in and sit on a team to say, all right, District A, this is how you're doing. Next year, we'll be the recipients of that, and we'll be opening our doors to Tri-State to come in and, determine how we're doing within a particular topic. Last year, we sat here and spoke about the need to support our teachers and students in terms of the learning and reading. We purchased Foundations, we've mentioned that a number of times, which is a specific multisensory phonics program to help our teachers and our students get back to the basics. That's what, Ms. Rodriguez had said a number of times, that getting back to the basics was really important. So this budget, one of the highlights is the Phase 2 component, expanding teacher resources and training to cover more than just phonics and more than just decoding, but to really analyze and focus on vocabulary development and background knowledge, leading to what we know as skilled reading, where things such as word recognition and comprehension come together so we can teach reading more holistically.
Another item, again, is a continuation from something that was started last year. Last year's budget presentation, I spoke about how we were going to incrementally increase our career and technical education BOCES line in the school district. Last year, I presented on how we were going to increase that by 5 seats. We're going to continue that initiative again this year. The rationale behind that was, you may recall, BOCES had a capital project where they're doing a lot of facility work there with the intention of increasing the number of seats available to students across the entire county. Rather than being confronted with a sharp increase down the line, our intent is to incrementally phase that in over a number of years, so that way by the time that project is fully completed, we're in a good place to be able to send a good number of additional students to that program. So that initiative is, again, being continued in this year's budget. Another item that was in there, and this was something that, as Matt and I have been kind of combing through the final budget submissions, we realized that it kind of echoed something that Patrick has been saying, along the way about, in general, things are more expensive. We're noticing, you'll hear in a lot of the different budget lines that increases are the result of different fees and different services that we have to pay for on the C&I side, ranging from, the repair and replacement of equipment to services that we receive outside of the school district. The cost of things are going up, and that's one of the things that we've seen woven throughout a lot of the different budget lines across the school district.
And a very specific example to that is last year, the gentleman who tunes our pianos throughout the district retired. And his costs were at a relatively, stable rate for a lot of years. Well, he retired. Well, the new group that we're using to tune our pianos is more expensive. And that's just an example of.
Double.
It is.
It's
And
double.
that's an example of the increase. To service a kiln in an art classroom now costs more money than it used to. So those are examples of specific fees and services.
And then again, at the end of the presentation, we'll go through the special ed and PPS budget and talk about the various implications of services that we provide to some of our students with disabilities.
So core programs are inclusive of all of our buildings, our 7 instructional buildings, and the costs that are associated with running them. Includes our textbooks and our supplies, includes in this budget, it will include our reading program and monies for that. Supplies, we'll get into the very specifics when we get into the sciences and social studies up at the high school. District-wide programs, again, those are all, health, art, music, LOTE, FACS, tech, gifted and talented, all fall under the district-wide programs.
And these, just for your information, when the proposed budget reports were loaded into board docs for tonight's presentation, these are the individual categories that are the reports that are run in there. The next one is physical education and athletics. Those are two sets of budget items. One is for the PE budget K-12 across the entire school district, as well as the budget of our interscholastic athletic programs, ranging from various fees, league fees, official fees, fees for tournaments, as well as equipment and materials for supplying the teams what they need for their programs. Special secondary programs includes the business department up at the high school, lines for student activities, as well as the BOCES occupational ed line, the CTEC line that I was talking about earlier. That's included in the special secondary budget.
And then we round that off with instructional support at the building levels. That's where our principal supply line, our general supplies, that's under which they fall. Conferences, where we're continuously sending our staff to, and meeting costs. Educational support services covers our academic intervention programs, our AAS reading, AAS math, as well as our parts or some of the funds for our English language learners. This is not inclusive of our federal title funds. There are monies that are associated with those programs in particular. It also includes our non-public textbooks. So all of our textbooks are covered under here, but our non-public textbooks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as we get to it, but there is an increase as the requests for more textbooks from some of our non-public students increases. We had to increase that line a little bit.
The instructional management line includes the lines associated with the C&I administration budget, as well as curriculum development, which is things like dues and publications, district-wide testing fees, various BOCES fees and BOCES trainings, lead mentor trainings, cross-contract trainings that we work with other BOCES with. And then, again, finally, the special education and PPS services. We'll go through the various specific lines of those budgets when we get to that portion of the presentation.
I have to tell you, I really liked Lori and Patrick's pie chart. I thought it popped. I think it popped more than this, so
Oh,
it did. It was nice. I'm just giving props. So next year ours will pop a little bit more.
we didn't talk about that when we were planning for that. You were going to say that before the presentation.
We didn't. Also, well, I hadn't seen theirs. I didn't know. So anyway, this is our pie chart, which really breaks down the programs and where our monies are allocated. You've got, and we just explained what the different categories are. The biggest being special secondary, which the biggest chunk of that is our OCC Ed.
Right. We don't include special ed and PPS because, again, that's really kind of a separate budget line. This is all of the other budget lines in their totality.
Are there any questions so far?
No.
Okay.
Why is instructional management separate from instructional support?
So instructional support deals largely with the buildings. That still provides various codes that are for things like supply lines, I believe, are in there, conferences and meetings for the buildings specifically. The instructional management is more C&I administration on our end. It's our professional development lines, fees for our associations, as well as like various other managerial BOCES fees that is not divided up amongst all of the various buildings. So instructional support is largely, you'll see, if you look at that budget line, you see all of the different elements are still broken down by building. Instructional management is a district-wide code.
So when we send teachers or staff members to BOCES for training, that's largely where that comes from, right?
Okay.
Instructional support also includes field trips and things like that. So that's one of the differences in building versus district-wide.
I think like furniture, I think building furniture lines are in instructional support, things like that.
Oops, sorry, go back. Okay, so specifics, we went over the general. I got new contacts. You don't need to know this, but they're great for distance, but they've really messed up my reading, so I had to go to CVS and get these, so. I'm glad my back is to
All right, we'll have
camera.
twins.
It's great. It's awesome. And that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. So core programs, as I said, cover the reading program, K-5 as an example. There's also covers general supplies. There are supplies such as, you'll see an increase at this, within the science department. We have, well, I don't know if you want to explain.
Sure. I mean, you'll notice if you go through all of the various budget lines, there's probably two lines specifically that will jump out at you. One is the science supply line up at the high school. We've spoken about how we have new state assessments at the 5th grade and 8th grade level in science. We're also moving to the next-gen standards at our secondary level in terms of the Regents exams, and there's some shifts that has to happen in various science labs, so that's materials needed by our science department to be able to support the shift in those labs. And then the other line is the social studies textbook line. 6 years ago, the social studies department had to move to the new the New York State social studies framework, and we adopted the Houghton Mifflin World History textbook at the 9th grade level for global studies. That 6-year site license is up. So we have to renew the digital license to access that textbook. So that's just kind of extending the usage of the digital version of the textbooks that we use in our global studies class.
You'll also see that we recoded a number of things. So Sapphire and Smith Clove last year had a general budget area of Smith Clove Text Gen Ed and Smith Clove Supplies Gen Ed. We broke those down into language arts and math. So you'll see a 100% decrease in those the general ed areas or supply and text area, but then you'll see an increase at Smith Clove Language Arts and Smith Clove Math, as well as Sapphire. As far as, well, we want to go in order, sorry. I was
No.
going to jump ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was
Are
going to
you
jump.
at district-wide programs?
Yeah, that's you.
So district-wide programs consist, as Matt had shared earlier, with many of our K-12 programs from health, art, music, with the exception of PE, which is in its own line. This is where we start to get into some of those fees that I was speaking about. If you look at the budget report, you'll notice some increase in art and music and family and consumer science lines. Those increases are in the family and consumer science line to the repair costs for the ovens and sewing machines that we have in our various departments. Those expenses are increasing. The maintenance of our kilns, the tuning of our various musical instruments, those lines are all increasing. You'll also notice if you go through the line that this line has two changes in it. One change is originally Odyssey of the Mind was included in the gifted and talented other expenses line. We've since pulled out the Odyssey of the Mind fees and expenses and created its own line for that. In addition, last year we spoke about the development of budgets for the schools that have theater productions. The theater productions are included in the district-wide programs line as well. So overall, in totality, the cost of each of those budget lines for the theater was $56,000. So there's a reduction in some of the other lines, but the overall increase is the inclusion of that. Another topic, I actually went back and I had to re-watch last year's CNI presentation, and I noticed.
How did we do?
We did great. We had a very lengthy conversation about the piano last year, and one of the things that was said was it was a one-time purchase, and there should be a reduction reflected in next year's budget. So if you look at the high school music line, there is a reduction in there due to the expense of the piano that is no longer in there.
But to that end, when a child, even at the elementary school, wants to play an instrument, we want to support that. And not every one of our students is able to go out and afford to rent an instrument. So there is an increase in some of the schools where we have to replace instruments, and so that we have school instruments, and you'll see a slight increase in some of those areas.
But in truth, the reason why the line is only going up by approximately 40,000, which is the inclusion of all of the drama lines, the various other increases are counterbalanced by the piano that is no longer in there. Alrighty.
All right, PE and athletics.
Sure, PE and athletics, the PE budget is down slightly, $2,000. There were some fairly sizable expenditures that we had to do last year that are no longer needed in the budget, so there's actually a slight reduction in PE. The majority of the increases on the athletics side, again, can be attributed to various fees that are being charged to our teams. If you went through the various detailed reports, many of our teams participate in different invitationals and tournaments and things like that. Many of those fees are increasing. We have a few teams that are due for, we have a cycle, a rotation of uniform purchases. All of our teams don't get brand-new uniforms every single year. So we have a number of teams that are due for new uniforms next year, which is another part of the increase. But again, the overall PE budget is up, and PE athletics budget is up just over 2%.
And then special secondary. What's your?
Sure. Special secondary, as I said earlier, includes our business department line, as well as student activities, but also the bulk of that line is attributed to BOCES, the BOCES CTE program, and that line is going up by just under $100,000, which is the inclusion of the additional seats for CTEC for the 24-25 school year.
And we then drop down to instructional support, which again, we're maintaining what we have. There is a bump up in some of our field trip lines. We believe in the importance of experiential learning. To give our kids the opportunity to go on field trips is important. There were years ago, field trips weren't an option. We brought them back a number of years ago, and we'd like to continue, with that. Graduation costs are factored in here, and then furniture costs are in here. So when we need student desks that have to be replaced, or new art tables, or whatever those costs are, those are factored in under instructional support, as well as conferences. Last year, we increased our conference line. That was something we presented on last year, the importance of professional development, and we'd like to maintain that for this year. We're not increasing it, but we would like to maintain that because we've continued to find it very beneficial. As far as education support, this is, again, AIS reading and math and costs not covered by title money or federal title money. I said earlier that the non-public or the request for non-public textbooks has increased, just the number, and that increase is going from 50,000 to 65,000 is what that would be. And another cost that's in there in terms of the increase is the cost of translators who are not district employees. So as we continue to want to connect with our parents and our community members, not everyone speaks English as their first language. It's typically easy for us to find a Spanish translator. Sometimes we have them working within our schools, or we have a larger number of people who could help support that. But then we have languages where we may not have the ability within our school. We may not be able to just go out and find somebody who speaks Serbian. We might, but they might not be a translator that we could utilize. So times like that, we have to contract with a company to help support that, and we increase that line as well.
And just a quick reminder about textbooks. We say this every year in this presentation about how textbook aid is 1-to-1. So for every dollar you spend, you get aided up to a maximum amount. Our textbook aid is usually somewhere in the neighborhood of about $500,000 across the entire school district. So when we run this budget, we do a separate budget report compiling all of the textbook lines across the entire school district to make sure that we maximize that aid. So that increase in non-public textbooks that we were speaking about still qualifies for that textbook aid. So just a reminder about that.
All right. So special ed and PPS, and we wanted to break that out just because it
Yep.
tends to be a sizable amount.
And instructional management was flat.
Yes, and again, that was the
Right,
BOCES
the
conference.
BOCES line. So there's two main components to the special ed budget. The first portion of the special ed budget consists of a variety of different lines that are largely service and administratively driven. One is our district-wide guidance line, which is $5,200. We're projecting that that's going to be flat next year. The next line is health services. The health services line consists of services that are both within our own district nurses' offices, as well as contracting to support our students of our district of residence students that are elsewhere. The increase in that line, the $45,000, $45,904 increase, is due to the cost that we have to pay for services of students that are placed outside of our school district. I'll give you an example. Sacred Heart, which used to be a district of location, non-public school in Monroe-Woodbury, we were required for any student that was a Monroe-Woodbury resident student providing health services to Sacred Heart. When Sacred Heart closed, many of those students went to non-public schools that were outside of the Monroe-Woodbury School District. If they reside in Monroe-Woodbury and they leave the school district and go elsewhere, we're still required to provide services, and usually it's in the form of the district of location of the school that they now attend bills us back for those health services that we should be providing because the kids reside in Monroe-Woodbury. Actually, tonight in the business section, there are a number of contracts that you will be approving for those types of services across multiple school districts. So we're seeing an increase in the request for services of Monroe-Woodbury students attending those out-of-district programs that we now get billed back for. So that's what that increase is attributed to. Largely, we sit down with the business office, they share with us what the billing is for those various services, and we just need to make sure that the subsequent budget reflects accurately what we are projecting based upon this year's current expenditures. So really, it's just, we're seeing an increase similar to the textbook request, we're seeing an increase in health services, so that's what the increase on that line is. The Committee on Special Education line is associated with various fees for our Committee on Special Education, which includes various services for out-of-district evaluations, as well as the travel lines for our various staff. That line we're projecting as being flat. The special class line is basically students with who get services in district where it's various textbook lines, it's various supply lines and consultants. There's a reduction that's happening in the special class line that the.
That's my morning alarm sound,
Yeah.
just so you know. I wake up to that every single morning. No, it's great, I'm up.
The $20,000 increase in the special class line is actually the result of a reduction in a different line in the PPS admin. And you can see that if you looked at the actual budget report, where we're shifting, again, looking at the expenditures, we needed some additional funds in the supply lines to support our programs in district, but we reduced another one of the lines by $20,000 in order to be able to compensate that. However, the remainder of the increase in the PPS administration line is due to two factors. One factor is the PPS admin consultant line. We have an increase of students that qualify for Medicaid reimbursement within the school district, and we actually have a company that does that, that oversees that process for us in the terms of Medicaid billing, and there's an increase in costs associated with the fees for that company, so that's what the increase in that line is. That's the PPS admin consult line. And then the second line is the PPS admin BOCES services. We previously had a private contractor that oversaw our high cost and stacking of aid for our special education students. We no longer use that private contractor, and we actually contract through Questar 3 BOCES upstate. And because that's a BOCES line, that line qualifies for BOCES aid. So we needed to create a PPS admin BOCES services line, and the funds are taken out of that line now in order to be able to qualify for BOCES aid. So that's the creation of a new line, but the funds were coming from someplace else for that. The last line is the home hospital instruction line. That is for students that are placed on instruction in a various healthcare facility because they have various medical needs, and many of the facilities have tutoring services and education services, and because they are Monroe-Woodbury residents, we have to provide that level of instruction for the students while they're in that placement. We currently have students that are in that program. We're projecting that they may be in that program into the 24-25 school year, so we had to increase that line in order to be able to plan for the likely continuation of those services. So those are, again, largely fee and service driven. Overall, you see the increase is approximately $220,000 in those lines. However, many of them do qualify for various forms of aid. The next portion of the PPS budget is tuition driven. So we basically have a number of different tuition lines in the district. The first tuition line is the tuition non-resident line. That's basically for any student who attends a non-public school in Monroe-Woodbury as the district of location. Similar to what I was talking about earlier regarding health services, we're responsible for the services of students who reside in Monroe-Woodbury. When Sacred Heart previously existed in Monroe-Woodbury, if a student from a neighboring school district went to Sacred Heart, we provided the health services to that student, and we would have the ability to be able to bill back that student's home school. Similarly, any non-public school where a student requires any sort of related services or special services, because we're the district of location, we're required to provide those services to that student, but then we bill back that student's district of residence for those services. So all of the fees that are associated with this line in the budget are 100% reimbursable because we bill back the district of residence of those students in this line. So even though you see an increase of $114,000, we're projecting an increase in need of services. In the end, that $114,000 will be recuperated because we bill back that student's district of residence. I hope that makes sense the way that I explained that. The next line is the bulk of the tuition budget, which is the tuition resident line, which basically consists of the education of Monroe-Woodbury students that reside within our school district that require various services in a number of different out-of-district placements. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about what that increase is attributed to. Again, that is not a one-to-one reimbursement the way that the non-resident is, but many of those students qualify for high-cost aid and stacking where we get reimbursed from state ed. Finally, the last line is the tuition chapter students. That's basically the costs associated with students that are placed in various different types of homes by state organizations that are, again, within the boundaries of Monroe-Woodbury. Many of the students are from other locations in areas outside of the school district. Similar to the tuition non-resident line, those lines are able to be billed. So even though there's a reduction in that line, we're projecting a reduction in that line next year, those funds for that line are reimbursed back to the school district. So going back to the resident line, the increase in that line is attributed to a variety of different factors. We track every single student that attends every single program, in many, many different programs in a variety of different counties in the area. First and foremost, we project approximately a 3% tuition increase on an annual basis. If there was no net change in any student either registering in the school district or leaving the school district or a student being brought back to the school district, we factor in an approximately a 3% increase just from a year-to-year tuition cost. So a portion of that increase can be attributed to that. Another piece of that, if you actually dug into the WinCap printout, you'll notice that specifically the line that is increasing the most is hold on one second. It is the other public Orange County, it's the tuition students with disabilities BOCES line, because we have a cohort of students that are CPSC that are now becoming school-aged, and we're projecting them, a group of students that are going to be going into an out-of-district placement. So that's where the other portion of that increase can be attributed to. And once again, that is not a one-to-one aidable situation, but it does, the majority of those students do qualify for stacking and high-cost aid.
So I have a question on that line.
Sure.
We're talking about 7,500, right?
Yep. The 2250, 490, 09, 7500?
The tuition
Oh,
revenue.
yeah, in general, the general resident tuition.
When you're budgeting for that, do you budget with the differential of the aid? Or is this like if we paid the full cost?
What you see here is the full cost. The aid doesn't come until the subsequent school year. So when Patrick does his presentation and he does the expenditures versus revenue, the aid that they project to receive is based upon the students that we pay for the full cost during this school year, and then we get the revenue the subsequent school year. So what you see is the full dollar amount.
I'm glad you asked that, because if I'm sitting here and I don't really know if I'm someone in the audience or who's watching this, and You'd almost think, well, why do we even have to budget for that if we're just going to get reimbursed for it? But again, we have to put out the money up front, and then we get reimbursed the following year.
Is that right, Patrick?
That's right. The appropriations budget, right? You have to account for the full expense, and then the revenue budget would offset that. We don't net things in this kind of presentation in the
Right.
budget.
It's the same as, I mean, if you were talking about textbook aid, the dollar amount that you see is the full cost of what it costs for us to buy those books. The following year is when we get, they're 1 year delayed in the reimbursement of that. So next year's revenue will get that $500,000 for this year's expenditures in textbooks. Same.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
1 hour. Pretty good. That's a first.
Brief but brilliant, Eric.
See? You asked. There's a lot of pressure.
We're up to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Policy manual, second reading. Are there any questions? May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Annual budget vote, May 21st, 2024. Does anyone have any questions on 9.1 to 9.4? May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Action items. Approval of a settlement agreement and a resolution to approve participation, 10.1 and 10.2. Any questions? May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Personnel, Ms. Hawk.
Thank you. Approval for the items listed on the personnel this evening?
Are there any questions? May we have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mitchell?
Thank you. I respectfully request the approval of business and financial items 12.1 through 12.8.
Thank you. Any questions? May we have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Committees on Special Education, 13.1 to 13.5. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Report by Student Board Representative.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Over the past month, I focused on the students and their health. I sent out a Google form that we all talked about a little bit at our last meeting, but surprisingly, we got over 232 responses, which was way higher than I expected. So this form was anonymous. It just ranged on how are the students doing. So we looked at a range of 1 to 10, their scale of how stressed were they. Did they understand the resources that they knew of? How was their relationships with friends, family, and their teachers, and if they had supports in their lives that they could kind of get through life. Not surprisingly, in the month of March, which many of us, some AP students, we have AP tests, we have juniors going into AP tests, college, a lot's going on. So we saw very high stress. We saw 70 students ranging from a 7 all the way to a 10. The 10s were much more rare, but the 7 to 8s were more common. So it was statistically significant that the data was that we did see a presence of stress. That is not to say this is all bad. This form did show some good, which was most of our students do know the resources that we have. They understood that they have supports here, that this isn't just that we're all out on our own. That is also not to say that we can still improve on where we're at, because we can say, all right, so we're looking at many different stressors of rising seniors going to college, we have juniors going into senior year, and also students who are just trying to get in as freshmen and sophomores into the Monroe-Woodbury High School. So I think I've already spoken with the guidance department on continuing to press this message that our guidance counselors are here. The students, many times, personally, not for myself, but others, sometimes we struggle getting to those appointments because you gotta take a study hall out, what time do I have to go? We just want to make sure that students know that we're here and here to help. So that's going to be something that I also focus on, as well as just also pushing this form out as continuing over the next few months. whether I see more responses up to the whole, maybe 500. But I'm putting out posters, putting out more, just kind of see where we get with this data, as well as also taking a perspective of how are the younger students in our district doing? How are they adjusting to school? How do they feel? So I'll be as well pushing that out to the middle and elementary schools. But as a reflection from this, students are stressed, and we're going to address it in the ways that they see proper fit. But I think we have something to be proud of is that they do know that we're here. And I think that is something to at least pat ourselves on the back on, that we've looked towards. They know the resources that are in front of them. They just have to get to the finish line. So just a few little highlights on what's going on in Monroe-Woodbury. We had the Diverse Mind and Unified Hearts Week, which focused on people who have challenges in their lives and how they're able to overcome these challenges. It was really good. We had a few guest speakers. I thought it was a really good presentation. The students really enjoyed the assembly, which was really fun to see, and kind of just good participation, which I love to see any day. We as well had the AP Lit classes doing a focus on the environment and how can we as a Monroe community kind of help the environment on a one-on-one aspect. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
A couple questions.
of course.
Do you have demographic information on?
No,
this
so
survey?
what I purposely did with this form was I just wanted to see how, as a school as a whole, how we were doing. If we want to go further with this survey, we can push it out where I say, just to juniors, how are we doing? I just wanted to start with this one where it wasn't like, fill this out, fill this out, fill this out. I kind of wanted it to be quick, easy, and done. Because many times I was talking to students, so yeah, it was really quick. I answered yes, no, 1 to 10, and they were done. So that's kind of the purpose of this one, where it was just a get off the ground.
The reason why I ask is because when you say that it could be attributed to AP, we don't, without knowing which grades are
Yeah.
feeling stress, it's kind of hard to say.
I think, I understand your question and where we could be coming from. I think just with this form targeted, I kind of just wanted to get an overall basic of how, as a whole of a school, are we doing before I go in depth, pushing out to further students. I kind of just wanted to see if I would get any response in Barry, because I didn't want to push juniors, what do you got? And they got nothing, and I'm like, I got nothing here. So I kind of, if we want to go further with this data, I will absolutely do it.
And follow-up question then is that information going to be given to them to kind of let them know that they're not alone?
Yeah, I think that's something that's, I personally feel like someone going to college, it is scary. It is, there's a lot on the line, and it's nice knowing it's not only me feeling this, and that's
Right.
what also with guidance is going to be important about. You're not alone in this. Many people are going through the same
Right.
challenges as you.
Thanks.
So I want to take a moment to recognize Michael. So Michael was honored by the Orange County Youth Bureau as an outstanding leadership and volunteerism and citizenship. So I want to congratulate him. This is an amazing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Talented.
Reports by committee. Policy.
There are no updates at this time. I believe I said at the last meeting, we're up to date on our policies, and we do not have any meetings scheduled.
Great. Visitation.
So on the 7th, we went to see the bus depot where Dawn and Jesse and Ken, the head mechanic, were kind enough to show us all around. It's a pretty awesome place to see. They got 114 buses going in and out of there every day without them keeping it efficient and organized. Nobody get anywhere in the district, so it's pretty awesome to see. Some of the new things that they have, when we first walked in, Dawn was showing us, she has this giant monitor in front of her that literally shows where every bus in the district is, and it has little indicators and chimes for if a particular bus is speeding or if the engine is having an issue, and it gives her an ability to draw reports that have summary of all the drivers' habits. So it's a pretty cool device that we got to see. For a couple other new things, they put in a new backflow preventer for the water supply, so God forbid something happens, it wouldn't flood the surrounding neighborhoods. They renovated the men's bathroom. They put in 7 exterior doors, and they have a couple of wish lists, that most of which are going to be covered by the capital project that we have upcoming. They're going to put in 4 new 6,000-gallon gas tanks. and probably a new pumping station for the gas that's been around since 1994. And they're seeking to look for an application that all of the district people who have kids on the bus would be able to see their bus on the application and see what the status of the bus is. Something I found pretty cool was that they use salt and sand and do their own grounds and all the buses without having to bring anyone else in. They share some resources with the ambulance corps and the police department in that area. They have 82 drivers now. They used to have 84. They lost 2 recently. And overall, they're doing a great job.
Great. Any questions? Thank you. Audit committee update. Our next meeting is on 4/4 at 5 p.m. at the Ed Centers here. We will be reviewing at that time, the RFPs will be in, and we will be interviewing up to the final 3 candidates for this process. So we're looking forward to that. That's the only update I have. Any questions? Something that we didn't talk about, student board representative search update. I'm just bringing that up to see how that process is coming along, how many applicants we've gotten.
6.
6. Okay, thank you.
We want to encourage them, because that student will be the boss of the new superintendent. So I highly encourage it. Go for it, guys.
You're starting trouble out there.
I am. I can't help it.
Sounds like discouragement, not encouragement.
And then superintendent search task force update.
There's not really much update. The posting will close on March 22nd, so I'll have a more detailed update in the month of April as to the candidates and the progress as to who's applied, and we can go over a little bit more of the process as to what we've kind of discussed, how things will move forward, but that'll be in April once everything kind of closes and it's officially done.
Great. We did get an update from DistrictWise last week. They have received 18 applicants. I think I did see 1 or 2 more come in this week, at least 1 for sure. And they did indicate there were 4 more in process. So they told us that they wanted to make our job hard. They believe that they will do that with the candidates who have applied. So we're looking forward to it now closing out at the end of the week and then moving forward with the process. They're going to vet and go through the initial pool of applicants. So, and thank you, Stacy, for all your work on that. Okay, reports by board and central office. Dawn?
Just thank you for the budget presentations.
I'll second that. Thank you guys for budget presentation, although I got to the almost the end of it, but it looks like a pretty thorough presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to thank our presenters and their staff, because I know a great deal of work goes into that. It's really appreciated. And congratulations to Michael on your award. That's really awesome. I'd also like to thank Ms. Beers, Ms. Schuler, and Ms. Montola at Central Valley for allowing me to read to their students at the PARP, Pick a Reading Partner Day, which was awesome because I got to read to my grandson's class. I also saw all of the plays, which were all awesome. Shrek was great, but I have to tell you, the middle school's Little Shop of Horrors really stood out because of that gigantic puppet on the stage. It was amazing. So thank you for that, and thank you for showing off all the talent we have in our district, because we really do have an amazing group of students. And have a good night.
Thank you.
I too enjoyed the plays, so great job by obviously the students and the staff that put all this together and all the hard work. A shout out to Bargoff and his team. Actually, I had a local elected official reach out to me about our website and how great it was. apparently they had to look at all the high school and district websites and figure out and reach out to folks. So he said that ours was the easiest out of Orange and Ulster County, which was very helpful, I thought, so.
It's actually Carol.
Yeah, I was,
So Carol, thank you.
She is the brain behind it.
So they said most of them were dated back to the 90s, and ours was actually in this decade, so that's well done.
yay.
Everybody have a safe trip home.
Thank you for all the presentations, and I was able to go to see the performance of Shrek, and it is truly amazing the talent that we have in our district, and have a good night.
Thank you for the presentation, and as a reminder to get your applications in if you want to be the student board representative for the 2024 school year. Don't be like me, get it in before Friday. That is it.
Have a good night.
Shout out to CV for the PARP week earlier. I had a pleasure to read it to second and third grade class at the CV. Middle school career fair, that was fantastic. So that really, really great job for all the folks who are involved. High school was a really good week for the diverse minds and unified hearts. The kids, students' bulletin boards were very impressive.
I'd like to congratulate Nikki Cook on her appointment tonight as the Director of Educational Support Services. Additionally, I'd like to congratulate a few MWTA members. Each year, the MWTA, MWEA nominate and award one of their own members for the distinction of being MWTA Teacher of the Year. This year's recipient is Eileen Machete. Teaching Assistant of the Year is Sue Fitzgerald. And the MWEA Employee of the Year, someone I work very close with, and I'm very excited for her, is Lynn Jeffries. Congratulations to those.
So, yes, the football schedule was, the tentative football schedule was released this week. I think I shared it at a past Board of Ed meeting. The plan was to have the football schedule released, and then we were going to dig in and start to plan for Friday night games. That is still absolutely the intention. We have 4 home games. We've already started that process. We are very confident. You know, last year we had a shorter turnaround time, and we were able to get it done, albeit it was a Thursday night rather than a Friday night, but we are very confident that we will get multiple. I think people are thinking, well, they're going to get us the one night game. We're anticipating we're going to get multiple. I just don't know definitively which ones yet and how many, but we will let people know in the very near future. It will be happening. We will get it done, absolutely, yes.
And just to clarify, Friday night.
Friday night, Friday.
I have a habit of saying night games.
Friday night games, yes. Multiple Friday
Just
night.
for the record, I don't even have a son that plays anymore, but it's important to the community, as you can see.
It's okay.
Eric, do we know when? Eric,
Well, yes, what's that?
do we know when we'll know this?
Hopefully soon. I mean, part of the issue is like working around the schedules with other school districts. I mean, for starters, it's going to be the 4 home games, so we're working with those school districts probably, I think, soon. It shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, and the other thing that needs to happen is not only do you have to work out the schedule with the other schools, but you also have to make sure that officials are available.
Yes.
So when those things fall into place, you'll have to.
And I think the reason why we're confident, we have much more time on our side. Last year, it was a short turnaround, which is the reason why it was actually an officiating issue that ended up having it be a Thursday night game rather than a Friday night game. But we're way early enough that we're confident we should be able to make it happen, no problem.
Thank you.
Yep. Shout out to the middle school. I went to the career fair looking for a new career, and it was awesome. They did a great job. It was the 2nd annual. The Orange Ulster Boasts Humanities Breakfast was awesome. Shout out to our local libraries. I think I've shared at the Board of Ed meeting in the past that we've partnered with our local libraries to start rolling out local library cards for our kids. We're now halfway done. They've gotten half the middle school and the high school, I think, was done. Now they're working on the elementary. So that it's been a partnership between the local librarians and our school librarians. So just a shout out to them. School plays were awesome. I agree with everybody. I shared at the last Board of Ed meeting that we had a speaker at the middle school about online safety and parenting teens with, I don't remember exactly what he titled it, but it was very, very well received. It was recorded, and the recording is posted on the district website, so I encourage everybody who did not have the ability to attend to please go and check that out. Thank you. Have a great spring break.
All right, so I agree with everybody as far as the plays. My own children are kind of saying, what do we now do on Friday nights since they're all done? They loved all of them as well. Good luck to all of our athletes at the beginning of the sports season. Congrats to our retirees. There are a couple of them I just want to point out. One is Trish Eisenhower. We got her letter. She's in sorry. Trish, congratulations, Trish, on your retirement. On behalf of Eric and myself in the curriculum office.
I'm in denial. Like I'm in denial about
I
Elsie.
got
I'm
you.
in denial
I know.
about Trish leaving too.
Also, Christine Egan in the payroll department. We've all worked closely with Christine, so congratulations to her. Congrats to Nikki on the move. We will fill that spot at Smith Clove with somebody who is wonderful. I have a lot of confidence in that. Congrats to our OM teams, who are all wonderful. I said to Deb Garling, I felt like watching them this year, it was almost a throwback to when like Frank Muscati was here, where OM where Odyssey Mine was this huge thing, and they were so good. 2 teams we have out of Pine Tree going to the States up in Syracuse, April 13th, that weekend. It's going to be great, right, Dr. Morales? It's going to be awesome. And the other night, a bunch of us were able to be at the middle school to interview students who are trying to be recipients of our Music Booster scholarships. And I think one of the things, I mean, we sat here, and the last student that we had, was the lead in the play, and he said, like, oh my gosh, they're so talented. But I interviewed with Mitchell Lang, who's a band teacher at CV, and he asked a question of everyone who was there, and the question was something along the lines of, has there ever been a moment where, on an emotional level, you really connected with music? And to hear these students and their responses, when they're incredibly talented, they're NISMA this, they're going to college for that, the talent level is not with question. But what music does for them in terms of the emotional connection was amazing to hear. That on the darkest days, it's a really bright spot. And then you had the ones who just said, I can totally be myself. I was saying to Anthony earlier, there was one student, and they said that they played the flute, and it started because they were a really good whistler when it was like at 4 years old. And the mom gave them a flute because they said, look, you're going to be doing this, here's a flute. And now, they're this world-class flautist up at the high school. So stories like that were amazing. Congrats to everybody there. And congrats to, I did that. Have a great spring break, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to echo what others have said. Congratulations to folks, and Nikki, congratulations as well. I'd like to thank Joanne Arkulis for a donation to the Cozy Cafe, equipment donation, and I also would like to mention our next budget meeting. So we had talked about doing a superintendent's recommendation on the 12th, and then the board adopting, I think, on the 18th. Elsie and I had a discussion, and we're proposing to take both those actions on the 18th, because it looks like the state budget will be late this year. We won't have the final state aid numbers until maybe later in the process. So if we put that off until the 18th, it's more likely we will sort of have the final picture. I don't anticipate we'll get less state aid. I think it'll go in the other direction for us. We're not one of those hold harmless districts, as I talked about, but I think it would be wise to wait, because we don't know how late it may go this year. And with that, I hope everyone has a nice evening.
I just have a question on that. What happens if it doesn't come in still at that point?
Well, then we'd make some assumptions.
Okay.
Projections, because by law, I mean, this has happened in the past, I believe the April 19th is the day we're required to adopt, so it's the next day after our board meeting.
Mhm.
And like I said, I think the news will be good, better for us. We're not a hold harmless district. I think if anything, there's been a lot of pushback on that element with foundation aid. And the piece that harmed us was the use of an average CPI, a 10-year average, rather than the actual CPI. So that was also to be reversed. Our state aid would go up.
So are you proposing no meeting on the 12th?
There's no meeting, that's what I was gonna say. The meeting that we have is on the 10th. Is that what you're saying for April 10th?
Yeah, the 10th. He meant the
10th, I'm
10th.
sorry.
Okay.
Right, we're proposing to, and actually in our, what we approved was for me to present it on the 18th, but on the website, it's the 10th, so there's a little miscommunication there. So we're saying, here's an opportunity for us to do it on the 18th. I was in a meeting with Senator Skoufis, and he was very clear that it is very unlikely that the budget is going to come in early, that it's more likely the budget will come in late. So Patrick and I spoke, and I felt as though we want to make sure that when I present the full numbers as I know them. So we're hoping that, I'm pretty confident we'll have all the information by the time I present on the 18th.
So no meeting on the 10th.
Oh, I didn't say that.
No, I didn't say that either. I just said.
But that's
no
up to
budget
you.
presentation on the 10th.
Whoa, that was fast.
Well, that's a question for
That's up to you.
the group. Do we
Well,
want,
that's a question if there's a need.
Yeah.
I just know that, and, again, I'll go over this more at whatever April meeting we have, but we will have quite a few additional meetings, and I say we, I mean us board members, because we will be sitting for interviews and first interviews and second interviews and other meetings. So if you're asking me for no meeting on April 10th, I say yes.
Well, what meeting is our probationary staff review?
18th.
That's the 18th?
Right.
Yeah.
That'll be a long meeting then, right? I mean, if we have
Yeah, that is a long meeting, right?
so
presentation.
are we fine? No meeting on the 10th? I'm fine.
Second.
Yep.
Okay.
So can I ask a question? Is there anything that we need to have approved on the 10th?
Too late.
Okay.
Well, we have a meeting
Asking
approximately.
personnel-wise,
Yeah.
A week later.
a week later is not.
Got it.
Right.
We're good.
That'll be okay.
They already voted.
Second.
Well, because technically, we have a meeting that following week.
Yeah, that's
So,
the link there's
yeah.
18th.
No, but I'm saying then we'll have another meeting after that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay. Great. Sorry.
Okay.
Did I say great?
I guess we're up to me. Just echoing everybody, the plays were incredible. Thank you for the presentations tonight. The pie charts were just awesome. I just want to remind the public that the Board of Ed applications are now open. So if anyone wants to come and join the fun festivities that you see up here, we really encourage you to take that out. They've been open since the 7th, and they will remain open until the 22nd of April. So please, if you're interested in joining the Board of Education, please get that application in, and have a good evening and a fantastic spring break.
Thank you to the presenters, and also have a great spring break as a teacher. I'm ready. And have a good night.
Thank you to the presenters, and congratulations to Mr. Martinez. And have a good night.
Thank you to the presenters. I know that takes a lot of work and a lot of days, and sometimes it's long days, but I do thank you, and I thank everybody else who's been a part of this to present this budget, and it's a thorough budget, and I'm just very grateful. The plays were amazing. I can't tell you how impressed I am by the students and everybody who does all that work. I wanted to just mention, and the board has in front of them a district data sheet. Last night, I attended the BOCES budget dinner, which was phenomenal. I got to see all the various programs that we're offering. They had the animal science, the dentistry, they had a digital design room. We also had dinner, and the dinner was cooked by our students. One particular student, her name is Chloe Cardona. She was one of the chefs that evening. She's a senior in our high school. The food was amazing. I was very, very impressed. So if you take a look at this data sheet, just for the board, it tells you how many students we have. Up until 2023, I will tell you that we've had 110 slots. And this year, I did speak with Mrs. Alicea, who's the director of Secondary Guidance Department, and she mentioned that we have 90 students again. I want to just explain something, that even though we have 110 students, if students drop out, we still have those 110 students. So she shared with me that she, along with Mrs. Soto and Dr. Hassel, are going to be looking at ways to ensure that we don't lose out on some of those slots, because we are preparing for 110 students and making a more concerted effort to make sure that if student drops out, that they drop out in time for us to fill it up with another student. So I just wanted to make sure of that. The BOCES, they also went over the BOCES budget. I will share some of the data that they gave you. If you're interested in having them come present, it might be too late to do that, so make sure that I share this with you and you have the information. So with that, I want to wish everybody a great spring break.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm going to be just ditto, ditto, ditto. Great job on the budget presentations. I do also understand how much work goes into budget preparation. Shrek, fantastic. Little Shop was fantastic. I was there that night with Suzanne. They just did a great job. Will say, hopefully the budget has some sound monies allocated, because there were some microphone issues.
That's Bargoff. I'm sorry, is it that far golf? We might
But the
have
kid who
to.
played Donkey handled it so well.
Oh, my goodness.
On
Were we
Friday
there on the
night,
same night?
Friday
Oh,
night,
yeah.
when he looked at the
did.
audience and
He's like,
thank you.
"Thank you."
It was,
Yeah.
that was,
Yeah, that's great. He's great. He just rolled with it.
he
Yeah.
did, it was great.
And then congratulations to Mr. Martinez. That's a fantastic honor. And wishing everyone a fantastic, safe, healthy spring break ahead. May I have a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss pending litigation?
Motion.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.